Let's jump in. Gaza. That didn't take long. Didn't take long in the sense that, we now have the ceasefire was broken over the weekend by Hamas. They attacked a group of soldiers in Rafah. And now Rafah is within the area that is under Israeli control. It's not the area from which Israel withdrew. Hamas, of course, says, oh, that's a rogue unit. They didn't get the memo that there was a ceasefire. Israel didn't take it that way. Israel viewed it as a break of ceasefire. 2 soldiers were killed, tragic, and a couple were injured. Israel then started a bombing campaign within the areas controlled by the Hamas and elsewhere, bombing a lot of the tunnels. We'll get to that later. Bombing a lot of the tunnels. And the Americans freaked out. So the Trump administration freaked out, and they were very upset. They immediately called the Israelis and told them to stop. Israel tried to resist. Ultimately, the story is that Trump kind of put his foot down, and the Israelis stopped. Oh, no, this was just a misunderstanding. It turns out Hamas is saying, and the ceasefire is back on. Not only that, but the administration has sent out Witkoff and what's his name, the son-in-law, Josh, whatever his name is. They send him to Israel. They arrived today, and to try to put pressure on Israel to go get back into the negotiating mood. And tomorrow we're going to see J.D. Vance arrive in Israel for kind of a formal VP visit, again, to put pressure on Israel to sustain the ceasefire while the negotiations are going on. In the meantime, the administration is putting almost all of its eggs, it seems, in the basket of Qatar. Qatar is Jared Kushner. Thank you. Qatar is the hope, the salvation of, I guess, the Gaza Strip, and the Americans are putting a lot of their faith in the Qataris, so a negotiation is going to start up on the phase 2 of the ceasefire, which would require the disarmament of Hamas and the entry of an international peacekeeping force made up of primarily from the Arab nations. But here's the reality. The reality is that Qatar is out there saying to the world that Hamas is not going to disarm, that Hamas is going to have to be a part of the long-term solution, that there is no de-radicalization, disarmament, or taking Hamas out of the picture. They are going to be part of whatever peace agreement is going to happen. Now, these supposedly were red lines for Israel and red lines for this administration. But the Qataris are just ignoring that completely and basically dictating kind of their terms. And it's quite shocking the extent to which the Qataris seem to have their claws, their fangs, whatever you want to call it, into this administration. I certainly understand the financial interest that both Jared Kushner, the Trumps, and Witkoff have in Qatar, and Qatar is using that. We also know about the gift the Qataris gave to the President of the United States, $400 million gift. Something doesn't smell right there about getting a gift like that from anybody, never mind a foreign government who is not a friend of the United States. But put that aside. Anyway, the Qataris are insisting on a central role here. Together with them are the Turks and the Egyptians. Turkey is not really interested in actual peace long term. They want to appear friendly to the United States so they get their F-35s. But ultimately, Turkey and Qatar's agenda is very much aligned around support for the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is the parent organization, if you will, of all the Sunni terrorist organizations out there, from Al-Qaeda to ISIS, certainly to Hamas, which used to be called the Muslim Brotherhood of Palestine. Qatar is the base of the Muslim Brotherhood in the world, the global base. That is where its preachers disseminate information. That is where its headquarters are. Everything happens through Qatar. And yet the United States treats them as an ally and a friend. And the Qataris and the Turks have every intention of keeping Hamas well established in the Gaza Strip. Now, Trump keeps saying that's unacceptable and that won't happen. And if the Hamas doesn't disarm and so on, they will be destroyed. But we've heard that kind of language before, and there's no indication and no suggestion that he can follow up on that. The Israelis keep saying we will not cut a deal, but the appetite for war right now in Israel is very low. Hostages are back. Israel kind of wants to get on with life. They want to go on with living. They're tired of war. They've been going at war for 2 years now. Soldiers have been dying. Parents have been worried about their kids in Gaza, and they just want to get on with things. And yet, Hamas is still there. The political leaders are saying we got to take care of Hamas, and the Israeli public is, yeah, we kind of know, but we'd rather just evade that so we can get on with life, which is how Israel's behaved for decades now. Why we got October 7th, partially because the political leaders went along with the Israeli public in evading the threat. Trump just wants a Nobel Prize. He just wants this somehow to be resolved. He's not interested in the details. He certainly is not interested in justice and has no problem cutting deals with evil, and is aligned himself with the Qataris, and is going to a large extent, seems to be willing to let the Qataris manage the process of moving forward. From his perspective, the hostages got released. Everything else is a detail. Figure it out. Who cares? But the reality is, the Qataris and the Turks are going to be the ones moving this forward, pushing this, and their push is going to be for keeping Hamas armed, keeping Hamas involved in the political process one way or the other. The Israelis will resist that. The U.S. will try to balance the two interests. I don't think the U.S. negotiators are going to insist strongly one way or the other. Hard to tell where this goes. Now, what's interesting in all of this is that maybe the most important potential players in the Middle East are not really involved here, and on purpose. Like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have basically said to themselves, said to the Americans, you are being fooled by the Qataris. The Qataris do not have, they're not interested in actually disarming Hamas. We do not want Hamas. We are not going to put money into rebuilding Gaza. We're not going to put troops in for a peacekeeping force as long as Hamas is in the presence. The officials, Saudi officials, are constantly warning the Americans about the Qatari and the Turks and what they want. And for now, they are completely staying out of it. They are not involved. And of course, without them, it's going to be very difficult to establish anything. The Hamas are confident enough right now that they are out there telling the world, we're not going to disarm. So a senior Hamas official in Qatar yesterday, the day before yesterday, basically said, Hamas will not disarm. We will maintain control over Gaza's security. This ceasefire is only temporary. Hudna is a temporary peace before the next war. He says a pause to rebuild our strength and regain some breathing room. So Trump has basically handed, and the Israelis have handed Hamas a pause to rebuild, to get stronger, and some breathing room. And yesterday, when Israel was saying, oh, they violated the ceasefire, let's go in and crush them, Trump said, oh, no, you can't do that. You got to give them the breathing room. You got to let them rebuild. No, I mean, he didn't say that, but that's the implication. Yeah, I mean, basically, the Trump administration is, allowing Hamas to reestablish itself, to kill all their opponents within the areas that they control. One of the things that they're doing right now is they're going around all the Gaza Strip and trying to find munitions, Israeli munitions that maybe haven't exploded, to get the gunpowder out of it, in order to turn them into IEDs. They are rearming themselves. They are recommitting themselves. I mean, look, Hamas is a jihadi organization. They believe in fighting to the death. They believe if they die fighting, they go to heaven and get 72 virgins. They're completely committed to dying while fighting the Israelis. And, they succumb to pressure because of American pressure to release the hostages, but they have no intention of disarming, no intention of giving up, no intention of disappearing, of fading into the mist. And indeed, they view this ceasefire as a weakness on the part of the West. And this example now of they violated ceasefire, Israel responded, and Trump puts pressure on Israel to stop. That just reaffirms their commitment to continue their battle. The other thing you have to remember is they truly believe that they are winning, and they are right. It's not just that they believe, they're actually correct in this, that they're winning the PR game, that they're winning the hearts and minds of the global population, that Israel is becoming a pariah state in the world, and that the longer they persist and the longer they get Israel to bomb, the more Israel will be demonized. And that'll only strengthen them. And the fact that Western leaders recognize the Palestinian state emboldens Hamas to continue. So, within that area that Hamas controls, they've regained their control over the civilian, over the population there. And they are rearming themselves. They're preparing for war. They're preparing to fight against the Israelis. They don't have a chance, and they know that. They know they're going to lose. But they want to lose in a huge blaze of fire with a lot of civilian casualties, so that they can establish the genocide, the fact that Israel is the bad actor. So, that's where we are. If you know the region, if you know anything about the conflict, that is going to be the outcome. And yet it is super sad to see the American, but not surprising, the American administration putting pressure on Israel, of all places. And what they should be doing is kicking out the Qataris, kicking out the Turks, handing organizational responsibilities over to the Saudis and to the UAE, who are much more moderate, who are much more interested in actual peace. Even the Egyptians, I think, are interested in ultimately the collapse of Hamas. The worst thing for Egypt is Hamas being more powerful, but also Egypt doesn't want Israel to kick out Hamas into Egypt. That would be horrific. The last thing Egypt wants is more Muslim Brotherhood, more Hamas in its territories. Egypt has been fighting the Muslim Brotherhood, fighting spin-offs of the Muslim Brotherhood for decades, and they don't need a boost to their numbers that could be provided by the collapse of Hamas and deportation of Hamas members out of the Gaza Strip. They want Hamas defeated or Hamas victorious, but they don't want a middle ground. And I think the Egyptians sense a weakness in the Americans, and therefore are playing for a Hamas victory. So, one of the things we saw in the Israeli response to the Hamas breaking the ceasefire over the weekend is the extensive bombing that Israel engaged in over Hamas tunnels. Tunnels that Israel has known have existed for a long time. Tunnels out of which Hamas has attacked Israeli positions and indeed killed Israeli soldiers. One tunnel in particular that was attacked yesterday was a tunnel the Hamas terrorists used to launch an attack that killed 10 IDF soldiers earlier in the war. And the question is, if Israel knew those tunnels existed and they knew Hamas was using them, why didn't they bomb them into oblivion? Why didn't they bomb And why didn't they destroy? I mean, Israel has complete control over the air. They can bomb anything they want. They can destroy anything they want. And there are still significant number of tunnels in Gaza that can be used to attack Israelis, that can be used to hide Hamas. Why are they still in existence? And the answer to that is that they're in existence because Israel did not bomb them, because that's where Hamas was hiding hostages. And here's the question being posed now in Israel. Okay, so in this particular tunnel from which Hamas came out and killed 10 Israeli soldiers, there were probably 2 Israeli hostages. Basically, what Israel chose to do is to trade the 2 hostages' lives for the 10 soldiers. And is that right? I think over the next few months, Israel's really going to grapple with this. Hundreds of soldiers died during the operation in Gaza. How many of their lives would have been saved if Israel has disregarded the existence of hostages and just crushed Hamas wherever they were, destroyed as much of their tunnel infrastructure as Israel knew about without regard to the hostages? Which is, by the way, the strategy I recommended on October 8th. On October 8th, I said, and have said over and over again since then, and said this in Israel. Only concern of the military should have been victory. Fast, quick, effective, complete and utter destruction of Hamas. And they should have saved the hostages whenever they could, but in generally, they should have not considered risk to the hostages as barriers to winning the war. In other words, they should have treated the hostages as if they were dead, rescued them when possible, and bombed and destroyed whatever was necessary to protect the soldiers' lives, to destroy Hamas's capabilities. They didn't do that, and they're going to have to grapple that. They have to grapple that. Amit Segal, who is one of the most prominent journalists in Israel, who is a huge ally of Netanyahu, he writes this. This, of course, presents a deeply uncomfortable reality. In choosing to protect Elkanah Bohot and the other hostage, these are the hostage in that tunnel, Israel knowingly left a lethal threat untouched, and the cost was 10 soldiers' lives. I won't judge whether that was the right decision or the least bad one, but it is a crucial arithmetic, but it is a cruel arithmetic that for the first time, Israelis are left to grapple with. Sometimes the moral imperative to save one life can come at the price of many others. Now, note that this is not the first time Israel's grappled with this. This is the situation every time they released prisoners in order to gain a hostage. This is the arithmetic that they've used every time throughout this war when they didn't bomb. And it's an arithmetic that was obvious, at least to me, and I think to anybody looking at this conflict objectively, the day after October 7th. In war, it's not that there are any good choices. People are going to die one way or the other. Your people are going to die one way or the other because you can't run a riskless war. And you have to choose a criteria by which you're going to fight. You have to choose a governing principle, a governing criteria. I think that's true in life. In everything. In running a business. And there has to be one governing criteria that determines all other decisions. And I would say that in war, the governing criteria has to be victory. Victory that is quick, and that minimize casualties on your own side. Yeah, that is where we are, right? And those are the choices Israel made, and those are the choices they're going to grapple with. And I think they'll in the end evade and ignore it. And I give Amit Segal a lot of credit for writing this and posting this and engaging in this moral issue, because I think most people don't want to think about it. Most people don't want to do the calculus. Most people don't want to consider these moral issues. They got the hostages back. The soldiers that died, and they don't want to see the relationship between the two.